Okay, so we have the author's considering deleting the underlined portion. Should this be kept, or deleted? That should say or. Okay, so oftentimes people immediately jump to kept or deleted, and sometimes it's really obvious if it should be kept or deleted. If you're a little iffy on it, look at like the reasoning behind it, this because, right? Because if we have like, if you may be able to just look at the reasoning and eliminate answer choices, right? Okay, so let's read the paragraph, kind of summarize it. The author wrote his first novel as a graduate student, 10 years before his best-selling novel was published. That initial novel is based on his experience as a child growing up in war-torn Bosnia, right? Then, in the 10-year span between these two novels, he also released a book of short stories, right? So this is about, like, so we have here, it's like he writes his first novel, then he, it's 10 years before his best-selling novel, and it tells you what the initial novel's about. And then we have this right here is, though lauded by critics at the time, it wasn't until the release of his best-selling novel that it was read by a general audience. So look what's happening here. It's like, though lauded by critics at the time, right? What is it referring to? Right? So it is referring to this first novel as a graduate student. So if we put in the middle here, in this 10-year span, he also released a book of short stories. I'm starting to talk about this book of short stories, and then I'm going right back to talking about this initial novel, right? So like, this doesn't make a ton of sense, like putting in, right? So if right after this, I went on to talk about that book of short stories, it would make sense. But I like first novel, right? Then talk about short stories, and then I go back to talking about that other novel. It doesn't make a ton of sense. So I'm going to get rid of like A and B, right? First of all, it doesn't set up the information that follows in the paragraph because it, again, is quite different, right? And B, it offers other examples it does offer other examples of the author's work, but they just don't fit here, right? It blurs the focus of the paragraph, and so C sounds pretty good, and then D, it fails to mention whether his book of short stories reached wide acclaim. Even if it said they reached wide acclaim, talking about the initial novel, short stories, back to the initial novel, right, it would blur the focus of the paragraph, which is about this initial novel. So answer choice C.